Hey guys, it's Mother's Day this Sunday. Wow, I am super excited. I am doing something very special and you'll find out about it at the end of the show. What are you guys doing for Mother's Day? Are you calling your mom? Are you taking her out for a special dinner? Are you being celebrated by your little ones and your husband? Whatever you're doing, I hope that you are having a great day. And if you are missing your mom here on earth, I send a special love to you guys. Today I wanted to chat with a very dear friend of mine who is a mom to a lot of kids. Some of them are her own, and some of them are neighborhood kids, and some of them attend the school down the road from her. Tracy Utley and I talk about all sorts of things. Everything from racial issues, how she started a business, to Bono, to her favorite pair of jeans. And we talk about Mother's Day. So join us in our conversation today. Here's Tracy. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Kareen.
How are you?
I'm doing just wonderful. How are you doing today?
Good. I have my sweet tea here, so I'm doing great.
Oh, your sweet tea.
So addicted. What do you drink in the morning? Do you drink coffee in the morning?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I make it the night before because all I want to do in the morning is plug it in. I am so loving coffee. I have since high school. I've loved coffee.
What do you mean you make it, you like prepare it so it goes
Yes.
off
I
in
put
the morning?
That's right. So I grind the beans and I do everything the night before, and then I have a percolator, and which is like what my mother used growing up. And then all I have to do in the morning is just plug it in. And I've already had 2 cups, and then I had a smoothie this morning. So those were my drinks for the morning.
Oh, wow. 2 cups of coffee and a smoothie. I don't think I could take that much liquid.
Yeah. Well,
great.
I got up early because my oldest son left for a school trip this morning, and I wanted to see him off. So I've been up since 6.
Oh, wow.
So I've spaced it out a bit.
So you and I know each other from way back. We've been friends for years. And you have done a whole lot. And I was like, I've got to get you on this podcast because you've done like some businesses. You've been kind of entrepreneurish in a way, and you're a writer. You've blogged before. But tell me a little bit about you.
Okay. So I am the mother to 4 boys, which kind of sets, the background for everything else that I've kind of gone out from. So I've kind of dabbled with doing an arts and wear show with my friend Stacy when we lived down in Franklin and needed a creative outlet. So we did that for a few years, which catapulted me into deciding to homeschool my kids. Which then sent us on a 4-year field trip up to the Mid-Atlantic area, which would be Maryland, is where we landed, where we discovered our love of milling flowers, fresh flowers, grains.
Like for making bread and stuff.
For making breads and cookies. I love to bake. And then that sort of led me into blogging. I blogged first for my Red Apron Organic company, which is the name of my flower company. And then I took that, and since we were away from home for so long, I started writing a little blog that I started when we were living out of state.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier about how we're kind of cut from the same mold in the fact that we just are out there and we like love to put cutesy things out there. But now that our kids are getting older, they're like, we're being censored. We're like, we can't put as much out there as we used to, because we would just like, this is a great video, I'm going to post this, or I'm going to, take a picture of this. Isn't this cute? But then all of a sudden they're like, no, Mom. Like, no, I don't think so.
Yeah. So yeah, I will never forget last year, my middle schooler getting in my car, and the first thing he said was, "My friends found your blog."
Oh
And it
no.
was, I took about a year hiatus from writing
Oh,
after that. And in addition to that, I was caring for my mother who was dying, and she has since died. And so trying to navigate how to be, I am not one of these writers who will get on and want to talk about my new pair of shoes or a recipe. My writing gravitates towards the gritty, and it's hard to be gritty when you're censored. And I am
yes.
so much a person who will tell you anything about myself. I really believe that secrets can be more damaging than not. And so I kind of err on the side of oversharing. And that bodes well, fine for me, but not so much for my men. So I'm trying to figure that one out.
Yeah, that's tough because I mean, yeah, you like you said you go deep and you're not
Mm-hmm.
like it's not like a lifestyle blog where you're like showing shoes
Yeah.
and, hair and makeup and all that
Decorating.
stuff,
Right.
decorating. It's more of a deep and personal and here here I am. This is my life. And
Mm-hmm.
I loved reading your blog posts. Those were
Mm,
great. But
thank you.
I know what it feels like to be censored and having to just kind of bring it down a notch. And but it's hard. It's hard to do that. Yeah.
Yes.
So tell me
Yes.
what else you're doing these days.
Well, right now we've lived in this neighborhood for 11 years. We live in a very beautifully diverse neighborhood, and I'm just really celebrating the triumphs of our neighborhood school. And we send our boys to unlikely schools, meaning two of my boys go to a school that was once considered one of the top 10 dangerous schools in America.
Oh, wow.
And
I didn't know that.
yes, and then yeah, so we kind of chose the unlikely path. I feel like our family kind of, that's our theme. We choose unlikely routes, and that is, sort of how we've done school. We started off homeschooling, which is how you and I met. And then my kids, in response to their curiosity about what public school was like, we decided to let them follow their, chosen path, which was traditional public school, which started 3 years ago. And so I have just been really excited to broaden our community to include the schools of our neighborhood that are doing wonderful things and are really fighting the good fight. And I'm bumping up against, you know, a lot of just what I feel like people have been living with for so long, and that's just systematic racism. And
Mm.
I'm seeing that because my kids go to schools where they are minorities, and it's really hard to get positive PR about the schools where my boys attend, and we're constantly in the news, but it's never for reasons that are typically never for reasons that are positive. And when they write stories that are slanderous, there's no retraction made once the story comes back. And the story in particular that was recently in the news was my boys go to a school that was one of 5 high schools in our neighborhood, not in our neighborhood, but in our
In your city.
district,
Mm-hmm.
in our just yeah, and they were accused of something called gamemanship, which is when during testing, they go through something called end of course testing, and the 5 schools, all predominantly African American populated schools, were they were accused of gamemanship, meaning they pull their most challenging students out of the classroom for the testing so that it looks like their test scores are higher than they actually are.
Oh,
And
wow.
so Metro, this silly news reporter came and did this story on these 5 high schools. And then Metro Davidson County did in a full investigation, found nothing to the effect of gamemanship. Yet there was not a retraction. There was not a news story that was covered. And so it's stuff like that happens all of the time. My son this morning left. His robotics team is going to the World Championship in St. Louis.
No
The
way.
World Championship. So
Oh my gosh, that's an
his and
awesome
you know,
thing.
one of the kids on his robotics team was homeless a few months ago until we found him a house. So, you know,
Wow.
the things that I see, the obstacles that I get to witness and see overcome are just astounding to me. These kids who are literally living in their car, and yet they can find the time to work a full-time job and be on the cross-country team and go to the, you know, World Championship robotics competition. And, you know, it's one thing if you come from a home that is a little bit more stable, but when you're living in your car and you manage these insurmountable obstacles,
Yeah, I
those
don't know how
things
they
are,
do that.
they're worth celebrating. And
Yeah.
so I'm just so grateful that my kids go to school with these kids.
And just
And
to see the contrast and to see their perseverance through
yes,
times, you know, because, you know, my child, if, you know, if he just doesn't get a good night's sleep or if he's, you know, doesn't get his favorite food to eat, it's like, you know, his world collapses.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like, hey, you know, there are others out there that, you know, don't have it as nice.
yes,
So it's good for them to see
absolutely.
that.
Well, and last year our valedictorian was homeless and the school rallied around her and she was going to drop out of school to take care of her family. And the school rallied around her and a local church that's right up the road, and they found her a house. And so these are the things that I am so privileged to be able to watch and to see it
Yeah.
unfold and to celebrate and to recognize the real resiliency as well as just the stalwart character of these kids that's so worth mentioning and celebrating. And so that's the biggest thing that I'm into right now is
Well, and
celebrating.
you were doing just recently here. You went and spoke at the Nashville
That's
Continues
continue.
the Conversation. Was it like a rally or was it like a what was it? Is it just like a meeting that they had? And tell me about who
Yeah.
started. You were telling me
Okay.
about somebody that started that. There were three
So
ladies that
there were,
started it.
that's right. So there are three women who started it. Um, I believe the history is in response to the Michael Brown murder. And so they are three very sincere and hopeful women in our community: Kristen Odmart, Tammy Bullock, and Leslie Mitchell. And so they started something called Nashville Continues the Conversation. And my understanding is that these three women are friends and were having these conversations amongst themselves and thought, you know, we should open our conversation up to the city at large. And so they've hosted, I believe the one that I was a part of was their third conversation. And this was the first one that was actually a themed conversation, and it was on education. And so even though, you know, I told you my kids have been homeschooled up until 3 years ago. So we've only had our kids in public school for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
They know my passion for celebrating the unlikely situations, if you will. And they wanted me to be part of the conversation. And so I went and spoke from a parent's perspective. My story and my inspiration comes from my grandmother, who I grew up in West Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother, in the 70s, you know, I was born in the 70s. My memory of my grandmother from the beginning was that she was the only white woman living in the projects. So she was living there out of necessity. She was poor. And then it kind of grew from practical to purposeful. And so I remember driving into the neighborhood and my parents telling me to get on the floor because they were fearful of drive-by shootings.
Oh,
Again,
wow.
we continue to live in a day of just a lot of fear mongering because we know that fear sells. And so I guess in this project, in this housing development where my grandmother lived, there was some violence. And so it was sort of how it was characterized. And it was my father's mother. And I remember him really wrestling with the fact that his mother lived there, and he eventually moved her out. But before that, I remember going and picking her up to come, be with us because she did not drive, and asking her, why do you live here? And she said, because I am these kids' grandmother. And she really felt a part of the community, and she felt
Wow.
loved, and she never felt unsafe. And so, this all happened when I was under the age of 10. So I recently, before I gave my talk, I asked my dad, I was like, am I remembering this story correctly, or am I romanticizing it? And he said, no, that is the way that he remembered it as well. My
Wow.
grandmother
She was living there. Yeah.
she was
And
living there, and I can't help but think that that is what has inspired me to choose to live in places where my kids are exposed to diversity, and send them to schools where not only they're exposed, but they are minorities. It gives them a different perspective that I think
mhm.
is a very valuable education, a world, more of a practical education.
How are they adjusting? Are they adjusting well?
Yeah.
Yes and some.
So, well, Charlie had a really rough, my second child, his first year, he was sent into a charter school that was a startup, and they since closed. But that school was a disaster from the beginning because the principal he should never have accepted the position as headmaster because he had health problems. So there was
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of inconsistency, and it was a charter school for all boys.
Which I
The
love that concept.
I do too, and
I
that's
love
why we
that.
chose it. But the boys were being bussed in from an hour away. They were on the bus from 6 a.m. They didn't get off until 6 p.m. They were coming from really hard places. Many of them relied on the free breakfast and the free lunch, and so it was just the perfect storm. And then you have
Mm.
all of these males and inconsistency. I remember substituting, and there was a desk that was thrown. I had to get in between two very large eighth graders. It culminated with one of my son's schoolmates committing suicide because he just couldn't handle the
Wow.
pressure of his life. He was the oldest of 7 kids, and he was sort of the man in the house, and his mom was single mom, and it was too much pressure for him. He was an eighth grader, and he hung himself. And
Mm.
I I remember asking my son, this is too much to put on you. Your first year in public school. Do you
Yes.
want, I gave him options. Do you want to leave? No. Do you want to be homeschooled? No. And he was so stalwart. And we had a sweet community of teachers, and many of these teachers, Corrine, this was their first year teaching. Can you
Yeah,
imagine?
no, that is
And,
tough. I
and
actually had that happen too. Well,
yeah,
my first year of teaching, I worked in inner city. It might have been my second year, but I had a student who they were playing with a gun, and
yikes.
he was shot, and he lived, and I actually drove up to Dallas. I was teaching right outside of Dallas in Waco, and went to Dallas to see him, thought he was doing okay, and then he actually passed away. And that was,
Oh
all
my
the grief
goodness.
counselors were out at our school, and he was just in the eighth grade, and I mean, I can't imagine what the suicide situation would be
Hmm.
there, but just when you lose someone, and then, especially the students, how it affects the students and how it affects the teachers, and just the whole morale of the school probably, you
Yeah.
know, was
Well, you and
hurting.
I have a mutual friend who was the science teacher there, who
Mm-hmm.
I really credit him as well as the English teacher and the math teacher. We had a really sweet community of teachers, and just to see their countenance change from hopeful first year teachers that were so full of optimism, and they were really shown just a heavy dose of reality really quickly. I'm
Yeah.
grateful that most of the teachers went on and they're still in education. Some of them decided to go in different directions, but yeah, it was a hard year. And
Well, and I definitely think, one of the things that I admire about you is that you bring people into your home. I know that you brought in a lot of those kids
yes,
before, during, and after all of that that was happening. And even as the school was folding, I think you were, still like taking muffins to the track
yes,
meets and things like that
yes,
with
yes,
your organic flour and um,
yes.
that you milled. I bet they were like, yum.
Yeah. So it's funny because I feel like in my life, I do a lot of not cross marketing, but it kind of is. So I'll take my flour and I'll make muffins and I'll take it to the cross country meet. So sort of in my life, every facet sort of bleeds into the next one because I
Hmm.
just sort of live this whole life. Like I'm not a good person for categories.
Yeah.
I don't separate my life very much. I don't have very good boundaries, I guess, is what that
No,
means.
you do. Well,
Excuse
but
me.
when I think about your grandmother and I think about you, there's so much similarities. It's just a different
Yeah.
time, but you're plopped right in the center of, a predominantly, lower income,
Yeah.
the kids don't look like your kids, and they and you welcome them, and just
Yeah.
like your grandmother did. You've
Yeah.
become, well, you're not their grandmother, but you're
Right.
their mother. And
I could be.
I think that's why I picked you as being my guest today for Mother's Day, because I do see you as like, you just are very welcoming. I mean, I feel like you're
Oh,
always bringing people in your home. You've had like, your church has like community groups, and you've had them at
yeah.
your house, and you've
Yeah.
hosted me. Of course, I've invited myself many times
Yes. I love
because
it.
I'm like, you need to have me on your porch. And you say, okay, Corinne, come on
I love
over.
it. I love
That's fine. And then of course I'll bring a friend or two, and
it.
we make a party out of it. And we do have some mutual friends, which is a lot of fun. But
Yes.
I do see that in you, that you're very much like your grandmother, and you are a mother who I admire. And a lot of people want to know what your key is. Like, wow, because
Oh.
you post these great things about your kids. I mean, they're just like avid learners and readers. And I have been trying for years, and to get my kid to read, and
Yeah.
to love to read as I do. But I mean, he reads now. He's
Yeah.
older, but not. And of course, he's the second and the last one of mine. So
Right.
he didn't really get a whole lot of being read to like that first one.
Yes. Yes.
So, and you've
Yes.
got four boys.
I've got four boys. They're all extremely different. They look different. They've all got different strengths and weaknesses. And so people who see us, just even physically looking at my kids, they're like, they all look so different. They all act so different. And so I really love that, because I think the tendency when you see someone who has the same gender is that they're all going to be the same. They're all going to be, playing the same sport and having the same interests. And that has not been the case for our family.
Yeah, they're all different. All different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I wanted you to come on because we want to talk about Mother's Day. And
Yes.
we were talking earlier about how we thought that Abraham Lincoln had kind of created it or brought it over or thought of it, but it wasn't true. It was
No.
Julia Ward Howe or something like that, during the Civil
Yes.
War. And
Yes.
she was the one that kind of started it. And
Right.
there was something about peace or something. What was that about? Where?
Well, she wrote the Battle Hymn of the Republic
Oh,
in
yes.
response to the Civil War, and she was a peace activist, and she really, I'm reading between the lines here, but you put woman and you put Mother's Day and you put peace, and it makes me wonder if she was hoping to empower women to be agents of change, which, let's face it, we are.
We are.
And so she is one of the ones who is credited with the beginning of Mother's Day in the United States. So it started in Greece and then
Oh, I
moved
didn't know
into the
that.
with the
Wow.
Greeks, and then moved into the UK with Mothering Sunday. And then you have Julia Ward Howe, and then you have a woman named Anna Jarvis. And Anna Jarvis is also, I think a lot of people maybe had a great idea. And so you have all of these different women who are credited with starting Mother's Day. So Anna Jarvis, and she was never a mother herself. She was never married, but in celebration of her mother, wanted to start a holiday. But then later, sort of was very resentful of the commercialization of it.
Oh,
You know,
no.
enter Hallmark,
Right.
and it was like, oh wow, why do they have to, make it all about gifts and whatnot, and which can go from a really well-intentioned motivation to just about money,
Yes. Yeah.
and
Make it all just
which is a
commercial.
bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I wonder because, what my family does is we just go out to eat,
yeah.
and usually, everyone else is going out to eat, so we're kind of having to choose a place that's not so crowded, and where we can get in and out. Or I don't want to just sit there
Sure.
and wait during my
Yeah.
Mother's Day, during my day.
Yeah.
And then my kids don't really know what to get me half the time, so they just ask and I tell them, and we usually just go shopping for it or buy it or whatever. So,
Very practical.
yeah, it is. I mean, one year I got an umbrella. Of course, I probably needed it, but that wasn't, I don't know. I wonder
Yeah.
what, I didn't look it up, but I wonder what the top, I wonder if jewelry's like the number one gift for Mother's
Mm.
Day. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe
Yeah.
flowers and
Yes.
jewelry, I hope.
I remember when I was growing up, mothers always wore corsages
Oh,
on
yes.
Mother's Day.
Yes, I do remember
And
that.
that, our church is so casual and a little non-traditional, so we don't acknowledge Mother's Day that way. And
Yeah.
in addition, it can be a painful holiday. My husband grew up without a mother, and so it was always very painful for him when his very well-intentioned teacher would say, everybody make a Mother's Day card,
Oh,
and he
wow.
had no
Yes.
one. And so it's worth being mindful of those who have either lost their mother or have suffered with infertility, or just for whatever reason haven't found themselves being a mother and really want it. I'm not saying that
Hmm.
motherhood is for everybody and that your life's not complete without children by any means, but there are some people who I love who grieve Mother's Day.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's also the day before, I know a friend of mine has placed her child for adoption. She's now a mother herself, but the day before, I think, is the adopted mothers or the mothers who have placed their children in adoption. It's
Wow.
their day to celebrate. I guess it's called Birth Mother's Day.
Day.
That
Wow.
might be what it's called, Birth Mother's Day.
And that's
Um,
remarkable in
mm,
itself.
yeah, I commend those that were able to do that. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah. Oh, one more thing I was going to say
Yeah.
about I did look up some of the things about Mother's Day, and one of the
Yeah.
funniest things was in Yugoslavia, what was formerly known as Yugoslavia, they had this like a tradition where they tie up their moms. They tie up your mom on Mother's Day, and then you can't get loose until you give the kids a treat.
Oh my Lord.
I was like, hello.
That
I was
sounds like
like,
my life.
no kidding. I was like, how is that different from all the other days? I
Why
mean,
just
like,
celebrate one day a week when it can be, or one day a year when it can be
yeah.
every day?
If I
That's
would just get,
hilarious.
if I just had to give them treats on that day, that might be a good Mother's Day for me, but
Oh
not
my
the tying up
goodness.
part.
So is that still the way they acknowledge, or is that
I
just
don't
like
think so, but
okay, let's
that
hope
would be,
not.
let's hope not. I didn't check, but let's hope not. So
Yeah,
anyway, well, I always
so
ask
quirky.
people that are on my
Yes.
show that are from Nashville, like,
Okay.
what's your favorite place to go to eat?
Oh, goodness. That is so hard because
I
we
know
have
we have tons.
such a wonderful, like, uh, that's like an impossible question.
It's growing by leaps and bounds. I mean, there's like a
Yeah.
restaurant popping up every single day, it seems like.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can't answer my favorite, honestly. I feel like what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to be mindful of going to restaurants where new places where we've never been. So we kind of get in a rut and just kind of go to places in our neighborhood, which are all fantastic. But my sister was in town last weekend and I wanted to take her to a new place. And so we went to this fun little place in Green Hills called Firefly Grill. Have you
Oh,
been
I
there?
have been there. It was very good.
It's so
Yummy.
good. But the ambiance was so quirky and I loved it felt like the Red Bar in Grayton Beach,
Yes, you're
right?
right. Yes,
Yeah.
you're right.
Just really quirky and funky
Hmm.
and eccentric. That's
Hmm.
the word.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a great little place right down the street from that. It's like, I think it's called the Bread and Company and Company or
Oh
something.
yeah. But didn't they
Oh, maybe
close?
they did. I haven't been there
Yeah.
in a while, but yeah, I have
Yeah.
tried Firefly Grill.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's so good. And I mean, it's there are just too many places. I can't even think of my favorite place. But yeah, I have lots
Well,
of favorite
and that's
places.
good too. Yeah. So we were talking about like with your business, you tell me a little bit more about how you started, it has your organic flower milling
That's right.
business. It's called
Yeah,
Red
red.
Apron,
That's right.
Red
Red
Apron
apron.
Garden.
I wear a red apron. It's very kitschy. So what happened was we moved to Maryland and I met this beautiful friend of mine named Jolie, and she is from a very, very big family. She was the oldest, and so her chore, her, I wouldn't say chore, but her job in the family was to make bread. And so when she was 12 years old, she saved her money and she bought her first mill. Is that not the sweetest thing?
Wow.
And so I remember going over to her house. Our kids would play together and she just showed me how to mill flour. And so for Mother's Day, ironically, I asked for my first mill. And at the time we were living in Maryland, we were about 30 minutes away from Amish country. So the boys and I would pile into the car and we would drive up to procure our organic grains. And because grains, came in bags of 50 to 100 pounds, I was left with a lot of grain. And, at the time, my boys were young, so we couldn't quite go through it all. So my husband suggested that maybe we start milling flours
Mm-hmm.
to
For
sell
others.
and
Oh, okay.
right
Yeah.
for others. And then that kind of moved into being part of the local farmers market.
Oh,
And so
nice.
there was no one at the time in the farmer's market in Maryland, in Frederick County, milling flowers. So the boys and I would go every Saturday and set up our tent, and I would put on my red apron, my red lipstick, and I would do my baking the night before, whatever flowers I was showcasing. And so then I would, bake some bread or some cookies, and I would offer samples to the market goers. And then that usually translated into them buying my flowers.
That's
Have
great.
you ever seen the movie Stranger Than Fiction with Will Ferrell
No,
and
I don't think so.
Maggie Gyllenhaal? It's such a great movie. But anyway, there's a scene in the movie where Maggie Gyllenhaal is a baker, and Will Ferrell is he works for the IRS. He's the tax guy, and he's sent to audit this small business owner who is Maggie Gyllenhaal. So anyway, they fall in love, and there's a scene in the movie where he brings her a box of fresh flowers, like,
Oh, yeah.
grains. So I always think about that scene when I say I work with fresh flowers. It's
Yeah,
not
because
the
it's not
flowers
the
in your yard.
flowers that you think, but
Right,
it's
right.
flowers. Oh, that I think that's such a cute
Yeah,
name, Fresh Flowers.
yeah, yeah,
So
fresh
you
flowers.
went on and did the farmers market, and you would sell to people.
Yes,
And did your boys help you mill some of the flour
yes,
and kind of package
they
it up?
did.
And
Well, I had to be careful with that because I was seen as a manufacturer by the state of Maryland. It was just, it was kind of, the red tape was almost too big of an obstacle for me, but I overcame it because I like a good challenge. But I couldn't allow them to help me mill. I had to be really, really careful with all of that. I had to get a commercial kitchen and get all of these licenses. It was ridiculous, but they helped me sell it, and they
yeah.
were really good salesmen. And when
That's
they got
great.
bored, they would climb the trees behind me, or my husband would take them to the parking lot next door that was abandoned, and they would do some practice driving when they were like 10 and 12, which is
Oh, I
hilarious.
bet they love that.
Yeah, they did. So it was a short 2 years, maybe 3 years that we sold. And then when we moved back to Tennessee, we opted not to sell because the market here, there was already a, a presence of fresh milled flowers at the market here.
Hmm.
So now I just mill for family and friends. I'll have friends who'll say, I really need some flour. And so I happily mill it for them, but I'm not selling it. And, I'm
So
just fine with that.
are you still buying those big? I guess they all come in big bags. Big
Yeah, I haven't had to because I'm not milling for,
for
hundreds of
everyone.
people.
Yeah.
I can just buy it at the health food store locally.
Just do it. Yeah. In small
Hmm.
batches.
That's
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
That's
That's
right.
good.
Yeah.
So, anything else we want to talk about Mother's Day that we are doing something
Oh, yes.
you have been doing something very special each Mother's Day for the last 3 years?
Yes.
Tell
Yes.
me about that.
Yes. So 3 years ago, my dear friend Maria and I decided that it would be fun on Mother's Day to actually get out of town.
To run away.
And, I feel like it's a win-win because
Oh,
that's sort of
yes.
our Mother's Day gift to ourselves and from our
Yes.
families. And then our families they're not on the hook to find the restaurant or the
Yeah.
flowers or whatever. And there's no expectation of making the day perfect because we're at the beach. So it's already
It's
perfect.
perfect. It's
So
yes.
my boys have really enjoyed the tradition. So 3 years ago, we have a free place to stay at the beach, and so that has sort of become a tradition. And so it started with just Maria and me, and we invited a couple of people. And so we kind of just every year just make a date, and then we just kind of choose different people to take with us. And so you're going this year. I'm so
Yay. I'm so
excited.
excited. I
That's
cannot
going to be
wait.
good.
I'm already thinking,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm just going to
That's
like
right.
what books I'm going to take. And
Yes.
because we were talking about that earlier about books. And
Yes.
what's your favorite book? Or what are you reading now?
Okay.
You don't have to pick a favorite
So,
because
yeah,
it's
thank
hard to pick a
you.
favorite.
The Bible, that's my favorite book.
Good answer. Good answer.
By the way, have you seen that interview with Eugene Peterson and Bono about the message?
No. What?
OMG, you need to watch
Really?
it.
Is it
So
on YouTube or is it on a?
I'll send it to you, but
Yeah, send it to me.
it's
Bono. It's like a. Are you
it's
saying it's like It's not a YouTube?
it's like a video of, so in 2002, for your listeners, Eugene Peterson, this, I think he was a pastor, lives in Montana. He translated the Bible into what I would consider more everyday language, so it's more accessible for the average person. And so Bono, the lead singer of the band U2, for those of
Mm-hmm.
you who've never heard of him, picked up a copy and began reading it, and just was so inspired to have the Bible written in and what he says is his language. And so
Wow.
he reaches out to Eugene Peterson, and Eugene Peterson is saying, somebody brings Eugene Peterson a copy of the Rolling Stone magazine, and he says, "Who is Bono?" He had never heard
He
of
had
it. This
never
was
heard
in
of it.
2002.
Oh my
So long
goodness.
story short, they become friends, and it's just this lovely exchange between two remarkable men who are incredibly humble and lovely. And so anyway, yeah, you'll have to check it out. So
I
I
need to
kind
check
of
that out.
went off on a tangent. So the books that I'm reading right now are very scattered, as I am very scattered. It's sort of a understatement for my life, but I'm reading a book right now called Jayber Crow, which is written by a man named Wendell Berry. My friend Carrie recommended it 11 years ago, and I'm just now getting to it. And I'm just not a huge fiction reader. I think I just have to probably, I feel like when I'm reading, I need to be learning something. So it's hard for
Mm-hmm.
me and not saying that you can't learn from fiction, because you certainly can. But I'm kind of neurotic that way, and I'm seeing a counselor about it. But so I'm reading Jayber Crow, and then I just finished Nora Ephron's book, I Feel Bad About My Neck, which is
Oh,
hilarious. I
what a great
love
title.
memoirs.
Oh, so
So
it's her memoir.
it's,
I didn't know that.
she's written several of
I thought
them.
it was just one of
And
those like comedy books. So it's a memoir. It's Nora
yes,
Ephron's memoir.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's just about women's issues. So she's written several books about, her memoir, coming from
Okay.
different perspectives. But this would be under the title, or under the category of just women's issues. And of course, it's hilarious.
Oh, I
She's
bet.
Yeah, she died in 2012. But I just love her because she's so funny and quirky. But she was really a smart gal. I mean, she wrote for the New Yorker, and she just has this whole history that we forget about, because she's, written and directed movies like When Harry Met Sally, and I think she did You've Got Mail, or maybe it was her sister. I can't remember. But anyway, her writing that I've read, gravitates towards more this silly, but she was a smart lady. And then another book I'm reading is called 10 Ways to Kill Your Child's Imagination. And I can't remember the author. I want to say his last name is it's like Escholon or something, Richard Echelon or something. But he
Mm-hmm.
also wrote Life Under Compulsion. And so this book is more a tongue-in-cheek approach to let's think about all the ways that we can dismiss the natural curiosity and imagination of our kids. And, it's the usual suspects, the things to do, the things not to do, the things that we hope to do, the things that we fight against, living in a society that is plagued with technology, and the nuances that we are just so, as adults, susceptible to, and especially our children.
Mm,
So,
yes.
yeah, so I have the tendency to go between, several books at once, which again is not the,
I
I don't know that it would be the most
I
optimal way.
I think
What about
that's fine.
you?
Well, my thing is especially when I go to the beach, I want to read
Yes.
something that is captivating and fast moving. I don't mind if it's I'm not big on love stories or whatever, but I just like a really good story. But one of the things is I want shorter chapters because I'm a
Yes.
stop and start kind of person, kind of reader. Like I'm always like,
Yes.
oh gosh, they want me to build a sandcastle with them, so I got to put my book down, and I hate to like not finish a chapter. Like I
Yes.
love being able to go, okay, 1 minute I'm going to finish this chapter, and then where I just have like one more page, and then I can. It just helps my brain work. That's just how my brain works. I'm compartmentalizing everything, I guess. But
Yes.
I like short
No.
chapters, and I like. Well, I was going to mention when you talked
Hmm.
about the Bible, the message. Have you seen the illustrated Bible?
I don't think so.
I think it's called the illustrated Bible, and it has like you can do like doodle. It's got like big margins where you can like write
Interesting.
stuff. You can follow them on Instagram. I think it's like illustrated faith, I think it's
Okay.
called. But like I always admire people who can like calligraphy and write, they're just everything is colorful, and it's almost like you can, write something big in like a really pretty marker or whatever on your Bible page.
Oh,
Like
that's
he is
great. You
risen
can
or a
take
big,
notes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it goes right over the words though. It does the
Yeah.
margin, but it goes right over the words.
Interesting.
Anyway, I love that.
Yeah.
So tell me three things that you're just loving these days that are
Three
like rocking your world.
things. Well, okay, so what's rocking my world right now is that I got a B12 shot 3 days ago. Holla!
A big
So
B12?
a B12, I'm telling you, it's bad when your 9-year-old child says, Mom, when was the last time you had a B12 shot? So I go to this wonderful practice and physicians, and they used to be located right up the street from me, and they moved. So it's not as easy. So I found a clinic in my neighborhood where you can get them. You could just walk in off the street. And so I kind of,
Seriously.
yeah.
Now, how did you know that you needed a B12 shot? Like, was
Well,
it prescribed, or did someone
it
say
was
it
prescribed.
was prescribed? Like your doctor said, you need a B12 shot.
Oh, she said I needed a lot of things. That was one
That
of
was one of the.
them. Yeah.
Tracy, you need to go to
So,
therapy. You need a B12 shot. You need
oh,
just like.
she's like, where do we even start with you? You're a disaster.
No.
So yes, so I'm loving the $5 B12 shot through the month of April.
$5.
And then
So
they
normally it's what? Like, is it 20? Normally 20
Well,
or normally
so
10?
at my doctor's office it's 20, but at the clinic up the street it's $10,
You can just walk
and
in.
and I can just walk in. And then in addition, for the month of April, for all of you Nashville folks, it's $5. So you have a few more days
Wow.
to get in and get your cheap B12 shot. So I'm loving that right now. The second thing I'm loving is I love a good scented candle. So if you come to my house, I live in a small house with 4 boys, 2 dogs. My house is in need of some intervention in the smell department. So I splurge on candles. My favorite candle is called Incognito, and it's by a candle company called Balutspa. You can find them online, or if you live near a Nordstrom, you can find them at Nordstrom. And
Ooh.
they're beautiful. They're in a gold tin. And so I have those in every room of my house, downstairs, not upstairs, because I have a little fella who I live with who, let's say, is curious about fire. So
Uh-oh.
we had to restrict his burn permit. We had to take away his burn permit for a while
Like
until he burns
burns
stuff.
inside the house,
That's right. He
not outside.
burns. No, that would be optimal, but he's been he's been found to be burning inside the house, which is problematic when you live in an older home. So we had
True,
that.
true. What
And
else?
my third thing is I love this. My sister was here this weekend, and I sent her over to this store called UAL, United Apparel Liquidators. It's on West End.
I was
If
just there.
you, yeah, I love it. You can
It
get
was,
$7 sunglasses. Yeah.
yes, that's what I bought. I bought some sunglasses and I was a little bit overwhelmed by not knowing like where to start, but everything was just beautiful um and they have like so they get things from all over and they
Yeah. So
it's
the
like a
first time
liquidator.
I walked in, I am a mom. My uniform is essentially just like jeans and t-shirts. And so I do splurge on my jeans and t-shirts because that's all I wear. And they're super practical. And so my favorite pair of jeans are usually like $150, which is a lot of money, but you think about how much you pay for like a formal gown that you wear once, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I walked into UAL and they had the jeans that I love for $30.
Oh
And
wow. What
and
jeans are
then
those? Do you
they're
mind sharing?
called no, they're called now I'm forgetting. They're called well, I have James jeans. They're called James
James
jeans.
jeans?
Yes. So a little shout out to my girls up in Maryland. When I lived in Maryland, I found this delightful group of women who have this beautiful store called Silk and Burlap. And I went in there and they convinced me to pay over $100 for a pair of jeans. But girl, I looked good. And so I love those girls. And I love the fact that I was convinced to try on something that I would otherwise never pay that much money for.
Right, yeah.
But then I went into UAL on West End and found them for $30. And so that was really fun. And then they just have beautiful t-shirts, the next rack over, they'll have like Chloe Couture and Stella McCartney and, just all kinds of ridiculous, labels of things that I can't afford.
Mm-hmm.
But you have a mix, you have, all of that. So it's good.
When I went to hear oh, what is her name now? I can't remember her name. She wrote Eat, Pray, Love, or Eat, Love,
Oh, yeah,
Eat,
yeah,
Pray, Love.
yeah.
She was in town and Elizabeth Gilbert, and she was in
Yes.
town and we saw her at like a book signing, even though she didn't sign any books. But she did talk. So, she didn't sign any books, but she said it was going to take too long, and
Yeah.
she had a cold or something. But
Okay.
the day that she was in town in Nashville, she visited that store and bought like some really expensive shoes, and she taught rant and raved about them. So I was like,
Really?
I gotta go to the store. I didn't even know it existed. So
Yes.
UAL, so
Yes.
awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So those are my three things I would recommend.
Well, I don't know if I would get the B12 shot just because I don't like shots. But tell me, what
Oh,
are the
yeah.
benefits? Like, what do you feel?
Well, I
But
feel
you
more
have a
energetic.
deficiency.
I have a deficiency. I have several deficiencies. That is one of them. And so a few years ago, had a panel of tests run, and I was, my adrenal glands were non-existent. They were, needed some reviving, I guess you could say. And so, yeah, so
And do you feel better?
I feel better. I feel more energetic. I'm in
Okay.
that wonderful season of life where I'm falling asleep easily, but waking up in the middle of the night, having
Mm.
difficulty sleeping. And so in the day, I need a boost. And so B12 is something that my body is naturally deficient in and needs. So
And does it
it,
last 6 months or a month or
no, well, my doctor has me going every 2 weeks. And I know that some people
seriously?
go once a week. So it just depends on
Wow.
the
I had
individual.
no idea.
And when you're energetic and when you're able to engage and do things, it helps your mental health. And I feel happier when I can engage my kids and my community. Otherwise, I just want to be in bed napping. And that is not good for my heart or my soul.
Yeah, and your family. you're a
Or my
busy
family,
mom.
by the way.
And your family, they need you too. Because you
Yes,
still have a little one at home.
I
Well,
do.
thanks so much for coming on. And I hope
Yes.
everyone has a great Mother's Day. And I hope that y'all will be thinking of us, because Tracy and I will be toes in the sand, drinking
That's
our
right.
hen, and our big beach hats on, and
That's right.
eating what we want. No
It's going to be
diets.
wonderful. It's going to be so wonderful. I can't
Yes,
wait.
it's going to be a blast. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you
And
so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was fun chatting with you.
I really enjoyed talking with Tracy. She was a barrel of laughs, and I just love hearing all the things that she's doing. I also really enjoyed watching that video with Bono and Eugene Peterson. It is amazing. It's two very insightful men that are impacting our world, and you should watch it. It's really, really good. I will have the link on that in the show notes under CorrineSandiford.com. If you'll just go to CorrineSandiford.com and click on podcast and look up Tracy Utley, episode 4, and you'll see the link to the Bono video. Also, you can connect with me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook under Corrine Sandiford. And please, please, please leave me a comment on iTunes and like the podcast. I really would appreciate it. I can't tell you enough how much that helps our podcast and helps more people hear about it. So thanks so much. Join me next week when I talk to another small business owner. Thanks for listening and spending this time with me. Bye.